Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Star Wars The Bad Batch episode review. This one's going to be for Season 1, Episode 6, which is called Decommissioned. So this was an interesting episode once again, where it actually had a few very interesting takeaways, but those takeaways amounted to a very small percentage of what the episode overall was about. And it meant that, 85-90% of the episode was just this rather generic, action set piece in this sort of droid kind of melting facility thing where they were decommissioning all the droids. And it was just fight these random police droids for like pretty much 20 minutes, and there's a few other things going on, and it's those small things that are so much more interesting than what we're actually overall trying to do. And part of the reason for that is, of course, to what they end up doing with the tactical droid head, is that the whole episode is basically set up, go here, get the tactical droid, and bring it back to me. The Bad Batch don't actually do that. Instead, it's revealed that some different characters, which we'll get into, are also here looking for it, and at the end of the episode the Bad Batch actually give the information over to them. So we don't actually see what the information the whole episode was about is actually, like, what it does, what it accomplishes. It's just that now someone else, another group has it, and they're being mysterious about that as well. So on the Bad Batch side of things, again, it feels like another episode where you could have done a whole lot more than you actually did in that side of things, but there's a few little bits. So Omega, of course, has the bow, and she starts to train with it. Echo's actually the one to try and teach her. Now, she struggles with it at the start, and the takeaway by the end is that she seems to be able to do it. I wasn't a big fan of how they ended up resolving this, because it felt like the struggle that she had with it was purely a strength problem, that she could barely hold the bow when she had it like drawn, and that's why her aim was off. And they were trying to create the idea of she's distracted, which is why she's all over the place. Whereas, I don't know, maybe it's just an animation thing of like, they thought in the animation that they're going for like the kid can't hold it back, but then the dialogue is saying something else. Maybe just visually they could have got that across a little bit better, because it did feel a bit weird at the end of the episode where Omega's just like boom, 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 and she has no problem drawing it back, no problem aiming or anything like that. So that was just a little bit of a weird one. They could have gone a little bit more technical on that front. And then also the whole distractions thing, I didn't really particularly buy into it that much. That like, what exactly do you mean by that? Like, two guys are like laughing at her and she can't use the bow even though she's just learning it. It was a bit like forced, I guess. But again, it was only a tiny fraction of the episode. I did like Echo kind of having a specific sort of one-on-one thing. He's the one teaching her, so that was nice. Wrecker probably ended up being one of the most interesting parts of the episode, because I think everyone was wondering, like, okay, he's hit his head a bunch of episodes in a row now. What are they doing here? It's clearly more than just lol. He's the Wrecker. He just goes in, gets smashed, and he takes a blow to the head every so often. But it was clear they were doing something more. But you couldn't say like 100% for sure. They're definitely doing the inhibitor chip thing. And I was a bit ready to roll my eyes and go, are you seriously doing this again? Like, how long is this tease going to go on for without you actually doing something of like, Wrecker hits his head, he feels his head, he's complaining about his head, and then he actually starts to say the line, like a good soldier follows orders. And I'm like, okay, there we go. Confirmation. They're doing this. He's able to sort of shrug it off because he's sort of required to be right in the middle of action. And so it sort of just is dismissed a little bit to the side. But it's clear setup going forward that we're going to have an affected by Order 66 Wrecker. When exactly they do this, I'm not sure. I hope they don't drag it on too long now that they've like fully committed to we're doing it. Because if we see him hitting his head like 2, 3, 4 episodes in a row before we finally get to it, I don't think that's something to do. this feels like we're coming up to the mid-season finale type thing. Should be probably dealing with what's going on with Wrecker, because none of the others seemed to notice it because he was just sort of put out of action most of this episode. So it was very much solo. We as the audience saw it. Wrecker himself isn't exactly sure what's going on, but it was a clear-cut setup for like, okay, they're actually doing something here. As for, I suppose, the setup for the episode, so the idea is like Sid, they are actually working for Sid, wants to get this tactical droid because tactical droids have a lot of information. So they have to go to this factory on Corellia, interesting, to get this droid, which is about to be basically melted down for parts, I guess. So it's about to be decommissioned along with all the other super battle droids and normal battle droids. So that was fun to see that. It was fun to see Corellia. Not that they focused too much on it because it was very much, we're set in this factory and that's it. We're not really doing too much with getting across, Corellia, which is, I think, mainly known for its shipyards. So I guess it makes sense why they have this sort of like industry factory location. But we didn't get to see too much of the planet. But, nice reference for sure, seeing the clones from the Separatists from the end of the Clone Wars being, used for something else, I guess. And they used them reasonably well by the end of the episode with the sort of clever plan. Use the tactical droid, take control of all these droids, and that's how you make the distraction to escape. But the big part of the episode, I don't think anyone really called this, was that the other people who were also after the tactical droid were Trace and Rafa from the middle arc of the Clone Wars Season 7. So the Martez sisters arrive on the scene, and I assume I'm not the only one who, when I saw that it was these two, just like groaned of like, oh no, they're back. What are they going to do this time? Like, I didn't hate them in the arc in the Clone Wars. It was just that arc in general was not that great for what it could have been or what it should have been. That arc in the Clone Wars was meant to be the big return of Ahsoka, that we explore Ahsoka as a character and how she feels being out of the Jedi Order, what she's doing outside of it, and if she has any feelings about coming back. But instead it was this arc where we kind of got that, but it was a 4-episode arc, and a fraction of one of those episodes maybe lingered on that topic, that it was a side plot in it. Most of it was about these sisters, and it included an episode that was just a complete waste of time, where I believe we started off in prison, they escape, and they're basically back in prison at the end, and we just reset the situation and didn't do anything. It's not that the arc was bad, it was just that it needed to only be like 2 episodes, not 4. And so there's always a sense of like you associate like these 2 characters with why a good fraction of the final season of the Clone Wars featured like arcs that weren't particularly amazing. So it is interesting to see in The Bad Batch the other arc that wasn't particularly amazing in the Clone Wars Season 7 be its own series, and the Martez sisters from the second arc, which people also had issues with, being united here in this episode. Now, I didn't mind them in this episode, and I think part of that was because it was just an action-centric episode. The only real thing they played off was, of course, why are they here? Why do they want a tactical droid? What are they suddenly involved with here? They did play off the idea of like both groups realizing, okay, they're competing against each other, but they realized that they're not like kind of bounty hunters countering each other, so they're not trying to like kill each other as such. So there's more of a camaraderie between them, and it's more of a sort of fun hunt to see who gets it first. And it includes, of course, Omega getting in trouble, and them wanting to actually help Omega, and them doing that in the end. So bit of teamwork at the end to get everyone out of it, which is pretty nice. And they end up realizing that, okay, they're doing this for like, we're doing this as a job, as part of mercenaries. Like, who knows where Sid is going to use this information? You actually have a goal in mind. Like, I think a line of dialogue earlier on in the episode basically said, okay, they're part of the rebellion because they don't like the Empire, so they're going to use it correctly. So Hunter hands it over. Fair enough. So the big thing with these two is just that, I think, is fine. Characters that we recognized actually being used in a reasonable way in this episode. Who are they working for? Like, well, what is the exact situation here? I was expecting going into this, like, okay, are we going to learn that they're just part of Saw Gerrera's crew or something like that? Not quite. Instead, what they did was on their ship at the end, they activate a holo and they talk and they're like, patch him in, and they reveal, oh, look, so we ran into some rogue clones, here's the situation. And all we get to see is basically like the corner of the shoulder, and it's someone wearing like robes, it looks like. Now, obviously, we're assuming Rebel aligned to some degree. But with the Martez sisters, their main connection to stuff beyond just them being random characters is Ahsoka. And obviously, Ahsoka is on the run from Order 66, hiding out at the moment. We don't know the full situation. But I think the implication here likely is that Ahsoka went to the Martez sisters after Order 66 because they're civilians that she knows who would help her. And she maybe introduced them to people that she knows who would also oppose the Empire. So who could it possibly be? Rex is an obvious idea because Rex and Ahsoka escaped Order 66 at like the exact same time. So it could be Rex, but the clothing maybe didn't match that. Is it Bail Organa, who would also, typically wear sort of senatorial robes, I guess, being pretty high up in Alderaan? That would make sense as a connection to the Rebels. I don't think, if it was Saw, I don't think they would have hidden the character like that, because we've already seen Saw in this series. That said, I don't know if Bail Organa is exactly a massive reveal that Rafa and Trace are working with Bail Organa, just because it was kind of clear there was a Rebel connection in there. So that's why I'm saying Rex, because Rex suddenly actually creates a kind of more of a mystery connection of it would be actually interesting if the Bad Batch met Rex at this point. That would open up a few doors with regards to the inhibitor chip and that sort of stuff. And they sort of implied that they'd meet again at the end because they left on, again, friendly terms. And I'm guessing they're building up to the idea that the Bad Batch are going to join the rebellion at some point, because they're not on the Empire side of things. They're sort of just mercenaries at the moment. And I think, Rafa, I think, was the one who said, you always make a choice in the end. And right now they're sort of in this kind of middle situation where they're figuring stuff out, but they don't exactly know what side they're necessarily on. And I guess part of that is because they want to get Crosshairs out first, and then maybe they'll make a decision. But still, I think the candidates are, like I said, Rex, Bail Organa, and when we first saw the visual, I'm not sure how much I really believe it, but I was thinking Obi-Wan, just because of robes and stuff like that. It's relatively early after Order 66 though, but again, there's some sort of a plot involving Obi-Wan, because we don't know exactly what the full deal is with the Obi-Wan series and what he does, what he gets up to. So he could be involved with Rebels before this, because but I suppose Bail Organa, Leia, that you have to have the reason for why they call Obi-Wan into action, and I suppose Bail knows Obi-Wan survived, so there's a way to involve Obi-Wan. Is it necessarily him? I'm not sure. Ahsoka's the obvious connection, but they specifically said patch him in. So unless they're going to go for some sort of a thing where they know it's Ahsoka, but to save Ahsoka's identity, they're doing the, call him Fulcrum, the nickname from Rebels, that this is the Fulcrum, so they're using he to avoid any suspicion whatsoever that it is Ahsoka. That could be something. If the reason they're holding back on doing any sort of reveal is because of that, that actually works. That said, is this necessarily something they want to do now? I'm not sure. That's why I do lean slightly towards it being they came into contact with this character potentially through Ahsoka, rather than it being Ahsoka herself. So, yeah, interesting episode. I don't know how many more of these type of episodes I really want the series to have, because what they've done over the last few episodes is basically set up a few key mysteries on massive cliffhangers. who hired Fennec Shand, who were Rafa and Trace working for, you know, when is the ticking time bomb that is Wrecker's inhibitor chip going to go off. They're all things that you're invested in. But over the last like 4 episodes, like, how much of the plot has directly been like about those things necessarily? And in the grand scheme of things, not a lot. Have we had a ton of particular character development on behalf of any of the members of the team or Omega? Not especially. So we're in a weird spot where there's a lot of interesting stuff going on, but they're holding back on giving us any of that actually interesting information. And the content that they're using to fill out most of the episodes is typically just rather generic action scenes that, sure, it's the team working, bonding together, but they're not really doing all that much character-wise with any member of the team. Like I said, Tech is still just Tech. Wrecker outside of the head thing is still just Wrecker, though they had the one moment with Omega. Echo is still just Echo. He helped her with the bow here, but that's really all Echo's done so far. So I'm waiting for the big character moments to kind of kick into gear. And, you know, that's why you can tell that they're very reliant in these episodes on, we are going to this planet whose name you'll probably remember, and here's a few references to other things you'll remember, because we sort of know you're not as invested in the Bad Batch as maybe you could be from a character perspective. So I think what I'm waiting for at this point is, when is the next plot-focused episode going to be? We haven't looked in on Crosshairs, Tarkin, Rampart, or the Kaminoans in quite a while. When are we going to return to that and set up like the stormtroopers, the enlisted recruits, and what's going on there? That's what I'm invested in. I want to see that again. In that, like, I wouldn't mind an episode that maybe doesn't feature much of the Bad Batch and is more focused on the kind of villain side of things. That's, I think, what we need at this point. If they're not ready to activate a lot of the plots for the Bad Batch just yet. So they're my thoughts on the episode. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.